Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's Overview Scrutiny Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Sayal Raza, Chair of Overview Scrutiny Committee. It's now 7 p.m. and I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting, to the committee, my fellow scrutineers, members and officers of the Council, and members of the public, whether present with us in House or watching the committee on the Council's YouTube channel. I would particularly like to welcome Councillor Emma Sidhu, who's joined the committee for the first time, and I'm sure the committee as a whole look forward to working with you. As it's so often the case now, we have a substantial agenda today with three substantive issues before us. One, housing financial strategy and delivery plan monitoring, an update on our housing function improvement plan, and a further update on the work of our homelessness prevention service. We do have other issues as well. An update on Council's electric vehicle charging strategy, update from the current work of all our scrutiny panels and North West London Joint Health Overview Scrutiny Committee, and our regular review of the work programme and urgent business. For the benefit of our guests and Councillor Sidhu, I'll take a few moments to set out how the meeting will work. As Chair, I'll run the meeting and invite people to speak. This year, I hope we can combine questions and observations as we did in September to allow for a more fluid discussion. I shall invite our guests to introduce their reports. I will then invite members of the committee to ask questions of our guests. I, or Councillor Furt, my Vice Chair, shall then speak last and then briefly sum up the discussion and advise of any issues or common ground to note. Every member of the committee who wishes to speak will have the opportunity to speak. Please be mindful of your fellow committee members, our guests, and ensure your contributions are pertinent and help us frame meaningful recommendations. Let's begin. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence, declaration of interest and other communications from members. I have received 2 apologies, Councillor Mullock and Councillor Mayor. Is there any other apologies I'm unaware of? Thank you. Do any members of the committee have any interest to declare or any other communications they wish to share? No, thank you. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 2, the minutes. So before us, we have the minutes of the 26th of September committee meeting. Do members have an issue of accuracy raised on a particular set of minutes? Okay, so we will agree the minutes now. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3. So this is our One Houser financial strategy and delivery plan monitoring. One of the main items of business tonight is the One Houser financial strategy and delivery plan monitoring. We brought these 2 items together tonight. The One Houser financial strategy sets out our medium term, and the delivery plan is a key element of ensuring we address the projected budget gap set out in our papers tonight. We'll be looking at a third plank, the budget, when we next meet. Sound financial management matters a great deal. Development of robust medium-term financial strategy is a key component of ensuring sound financial management and delivering against the Council's commitments, which many of us remember from September 2022 when Cabinet came to OSC to set out their ambition. Cabinet will be approving the One Houser financial strategy later this month, so this is another opportunity for OSC to play a role in pre-decision scrutiny. In addition to noting progress in developing a sustained financial position over the medium term, we are asked to scrutinise and comment on both the medium-term financial strategy and scrutinise progress against the delivery plan. We are joined this evening by Councillor Rajawat, Leader of Council and Portfolio Holder for Strategy, Resources and External Affairs, Andrew Cox, the Council's Interim Executive Director of Finance and Resources, and Rupa Ragwani, Housing Interim Chief Financial Officer. We also have a number of Councillor Rajawat's Cabinet in attendance. Welcome to you all. Councillor Rajawat, may I ask you to introduce your report? You do have, of course, 5 minutes.
Chair Committee, thank you very much for having us. You've done the preamble for me, so thank you very much. Absolutely important that we have sound financial management and a corporate plan that actually delivers on our priorities and our ambitions for Hounslow. So members have the report that is going on to Cabinet in advance, so hopefully you've had an opportunity to review that, and you have also had the slides as well in advance. So with your permission, Chair, I'm going to just bring out a few slides that I think are of particular interest this evening with a view to have as much time to answer questions as possible. So the first part of my presentation is around that delivery plan. Members will recall in the early days of the administration, we agreed a corporate plan. Well, that's fine, but how do you actually deliver it? How do you monitor against that? And that's really, really important. And alongside, you have the financial plan as well, which is a live document. And this sort of report updates that as to where we've got to. As a reminder, the delivery plan has 4 portfolios within it. So place, people, capital, and digital is a new inclusion in that as of recently. And sitting underneath that, you have a number of projects. Now, to bring that to life, if we move to the next slide, you'll see within the people portfolio, there are a number of different projects. Some of those you will be familiar with, some you may not be as familiar because there is work going on in the background, and you'll see business cases start coming through to Cabinet on some of these shortly, and that's the same for each of the portfolios. But broadly speaking, all of those projects, if you like, using the project management methodology that we use, are there to deliver the outcomes that you see on the right-hand side. So cashable financial benefits, deliver our manifesto, the political manifesto that translated into the corporate plan and the commitments within it, improve outcomes for residents, and that's absolutely central to our mission. Addressing areas of financial risk, and those do exist, and I'll come on to some of those in a moment. Address areas of corporate and operational risks, sort of linked, and then try and manage the impact of future demand, although we have to acknowledge that that's often a moving feast as well. So there's a lot more detail within your report. That was just to give you a flavour on the delivery plan. Very happy to take questions on that. Moving on from there, in terms of the One Hounslow financial strategy update, now it wouldn't be right if I didn't come here, and I say it every year, and so I'm going to say it again this year. This budget round is looking like probably the most difficult budget round that this council will have to set. There are a number of issues that we are working through. And as I mentioned, talking about the delivery plan, we always have to keep in mind our ambition for Hounslow. And I'm delighted that the Cabinet have joined me this evening to talk through any areas of specific areas, because we are absolutely focused on delivering for our residents, for our businesses, for our voluntary sector. And having sound financial management is absolutely key to that. So in terms of those objectives and the outcomes, our ambition is to meet the borough's strategic priorities whilst maintaining financial stability over the long term. And that's difficult in the medium term. We need to find a way of delivering that way after any of us have gone from this council so that it sticks. So a recurrently balanced plan, moving away from contingency. So managing the way we offer our services, reimagining the way we offer our services so that we're not having to look at contingency as a way of bridging. Planning strategically, so looking at demand, being really good on trying to plan for demand wherever we can, being strategic, doing strategic needs assessments, and then transformational change plans. Some of those will deliver in the short term, some of those are medium term, some of those will deliver over the long term, and we need to be absolutely clear where those transformation programs fall. Better use and focus on available funding, and then prioritization of resources to be able to meet that. Demonstrate and enable delivery of our corporate ambitions, so the corporate plan. A strategy that is aligned to and incorporates other key strategies and plans, and then financial stability over the medium term. And the delivery plan and the One Hounslow approach that we have within that is the primary vehicle for achieving financial stability over the medium term. I was convinced of that when we first moved to the One Hounslow programme, and as I see it develop, I'm absolutely committed to that approach because I think it will absolutely deliver. In terms of our approach to this report, but also in terms of budget setting more generally, we have 4 building blocks. So I think it's really, really important you start from a point of understanding what the do nothing point is. If you did absolutely nothing, what would that impact be on the budget? And how long can we survive by doing nothing? That's not to say that we won't do anything, but you need to understand where you're starting from. Then you do your service planning, so you recognize the financial benefits and costs of enablers. So those are the things already within the organization that promote efficiency in the use of resources. And sometimes it's about realigning those, refocusing those. Sometimes it's about creating those enablers as well. Then you look at your delivery plan programs and what they will deliver, as I said, over the short, medium, and long term. And the last bucket is sort of my sort of last option. It's the one that I least like going to. How can you bridge any short-term pressures that still exist after you've done everything else? And I'm very clear that is the last go-to, and it comes back to the earlier slide where actually those contingencies aren't our go-to when we're trying to balance the budget. So I'm going to skip 2 slides. Is that right? That one. So it is very, very clear that there is a gap that we are trying to address. There is a lot of work going on in the background between the cabinet and their officers. But I wanted to give you a flavour of what is driving the gap. And primarily it's inflation and service demand pressures. Both of those are on the increase, although inflation has come down a little bit. It's still higher than where you really want it to be. And I should say that is without all the social care pressures factored in. Those numbers would increase slightly once you factor those in, but there are different drivers for those. But that's in the region of £7 to £9 million. And then where does that leave us for the report in terms of the gap? So we balanced the budget this February just gone. We do have a residual gap. Now, the key takeaway for this is, yes, you can absolutely deal with the pressure next year of 39 million, but actually, as a cabinet, we're really clear that we want to be focused on that £51.1 million figure, because that's really the goal at the end of the administration, making sure that that's balanced and everything else falls in line from there. I think at that point, Chair, I might just pause. Well, stop actually, because I think that gives you a flavour of where we are. There's a lot of detail in the slides. I'm very happy to take questions on those or the delivery plan.
Thank you for that, Councillor Rajwat. We now move to sort of questions, of course, and discussions. So if I can just pass this to committee to seek clarification on the report that you just heard, please. Okay, I mean, I'll... Sorry, Councillor Foot. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Chair, I think, we've all heard of various councils throughout the land failing on their budget plans and falling short of where they want to be. And I've heard, your comments today about how secure you feel that we are, but and we're looking at this here where we're coming up with a projected budget gap of 0 for the current year. I mean, how close are we to that? I mean, how much more work have you and your group got to get that into actually being a fact?
So we are on that journey, Councillor. Obviously, the budget gets set in February. So with the transformation programs, it's really important that the programs deliver in terms of the outcomes and that we have a degree of certainty around some of those numbers. So what you'll see in the report is where we have a degree of confidence on the numbers, they're reflected in that. So that's our starting point. It's obviously moved in this report, and some of the slides allude to that, but it hasn't closed that gap completely. There is more work to do on some of those transformation programs in there. We also still need to keep an eye out on what inflation is doing as well, and what impact that has on the numbers. So there is a significant amount of work still to do, but we've started at that point. In this report, you'll see that that number has come down. I can't remember what's quoted in the report, actually. I'll come back to you on what the actual figure is in the report. It's 40.4 over the medium term. So there is still work to do. I'm not going to be lying that, but we've got that line of sight leading up to the budget now. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other sort of questions? I do have just a couple of questions from me myself. So we do, of course, really pushing for the SEND department within the council. So current and future demands, are we going to be able to mitigate that?
So if you don't mind, Councillor Bath is far better placed to answer that question. So if you don't mind, I'll invite her to. I mean, while she's coming up, it is very, very difficult to try and predict for that sort of thing, but we've got a good team trying to look at those projections. So, up to you.
Sorry, I was listening, but could you repeat the question again, just in case I've misheard it?
Yeah, sure. So how well resourced are we for SEND department from currently and for the future as well?
Okay, so I think I probably came to this committee a year ago and we talked about SEND. And one of the things that we did, which obviously the council is aware that we're overspending on our SEND, like a lot of local authorities are, and we have been doing for a number of years. So as a result of that, we were asked to, by the Department of Education, along with other local authorities, to take part in what's called a safety valve programme, where we have an action plan and a strategy to try and obviously not just reduce the spend, but to ensure that we have better outcomes for children with special educational needs and disabilities. So we're in the early stages of that programme. We've delivered a statement of action to the Department of Education and a plan, and it's called a written statement of action, and they seem to be satisfied with that. I think probably somewhere in your slides and presentations, I think I've seen it, there's a number of projects that take part in terms of that self. I've just been shown here, there's a number of projects. I'm just thinking from the top of my head, actually, done quite well.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a number of projects that sit under that whole SEND sort of area. That includes working with schools, and it includes sort of increasing capacity. So I'm happy to come at a later date as well to the committee to tell you to sort of explain in detail about, but that's roughly in a nutshell.
So the programs that Councillor Bath referred to will be subject to a cabinet report, strategic business case, which will come to December cabinet.
Yep, thank you for that. The only other sort of question from me is how do we consider validity of investments? How do we decide which transformation activities to spend money on?
So a lot of our priorities in terms of where we spend our money are dictated to, as I mentioned on the manifesto. That was our contract with the residents, and that's what we need to that's what we translated into the corporate plan. I think the point there is you can take the manifesto commitments, put them into a corporate plan, and they become very small projects. But actually, if you look at them long term and stretch them out over a longer period of time to deliver better outcomes, deliver the transformation, and deliver some of the financial benefits, they become much longer programs. So it's not just about a tick box. That was our manifesto commitment. We've achieved that. It was about, what does that program look like? What are the outcomes? How do we need to tweak that slightly to be able to deliver better outcomes, as the case may be? And how do we monitor that as we go along?
Thank you for that. Is there any other? Councillor Sharma, please.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the finances, we are aware that obviously that the vast majority of our finances goes to help the vulnerable and the needy with social care, children and adults. How can we prove that we are actually being that they're not going to get lost in the system? They won't get lost in the system. That we will have enough to support those vulnerable within our communities.
So in terms of adult social care and children's social care, so most vulnerable adults, most vulnerable kids, that is over half of our spend every year. And that is, some of that is money that we'd absolutely spend, and it's absolutely right that we do that. We need to be transparent about that. We need to continually look at the services that we're offering, and if they are delivering the best outcomes, and also delivering value for money. As well. But then we've got other things like, for our most vulnerable, like the council tax support scheme, which is still one of the most generous. So there is a lot of work going on, and if someone, part of the challenge is, if someone comes in through adult social care and presents a problem, what we are all charged as a cabinet, as an administration, as officers, is thinking about that corporately. So it's not just about that adult social care problem. It's also that there may be a housing problem that we need to deal with. There might be a benefits problem. There may be needing some hardship. So it's thinking about things more corporately rather than individual departments. And often when you've got a financial challenge, you can fall into the trap of being quite siloed. And one of the things that I'm particularly proud of is that we don't think in a siloed way. We have cabinet and CLT joint meetings and away days where we think about problems in the round as opposed to the individuals, and the budget challenge won't be met individually, it'll be met across the entire organisation.
Councillor Tuck, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the One Hounslow team. It's the first time I've seen a lot many green status of the projects. So congratulations for that. I have specific concerns regarding two of the projects. One is for property assets planning in Spat Hill, and the other one is asset management. For the first one, the status went from amber to red. You've described the reasons for that, but can we look into the remedial actions, like something like this doesn't happen again? And these are two very crucial projects. So how quickly are we looking to remediate this?
So I might bring in Andrew on the specific on the two projects, but I think there is a general comment here, and I'm not making any criticism of it. I don't see these projects as sort of quick, because often with quick you want you lose the plan and you lose the focus. So it's about keeping the focus whilst keeping focus on the plan itself. And you're right, both those projects are really key projects in the programme. So there is that focus. Councillor Bruce has a regular focus on them, as actually does Councillor Sampson in a housing portfolio brief as well. And we meet regularly to make sure that they're on track, but they need to be right and they need to be fit for the future. Do you want to say any more on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think you're talking about the two projects within the digital portfolio. Is that right? Just to check. I'm talking. Yeah. So I think the property assets planning and spatial project, that's the new system that will be used in planning. As with any IT project, they are complex. And actually what this has proved is we had a schedule. we tested it, and the testing proved it wasn't ready. So it was the right thing to do to delay, actually do the remedial action. So when we go live, it works for the staff and it works for the residents. So there's a lot of work underway at the moment in order to get that live as soon as possible. I haven't got the exact date that's replanned in my head, but I know we are working at pace to get that there as quickly as possible, but make sure it is fit for purpose when it goes live, because actually going live with a system that's not ready is far worse than not going live with a system. And then the other one, was that the
Asset management.
asset management? Right at the top. Sorry, I'm just reading up on that. So that's the one that's at amber. From memory, I think that's at amber because it is challenging. Again, we're trying to catch up on the schedule, the budget, and just making sure we've got everything moving along. There again is remedial action. We've got a plan in place, we've got a team in place, and we're getting the right resources in place to do that and to try and get that back on track. It's not red, it's not gone wrong yet, but we've obviously got to manage risk in there. And as I think the leader has said previously in this committee, and I've said previously, we should, if stuff is amber, we want it to be amber. We don't want to be greenwashing things and be overly optimistic with things. It's about being honest where we think there is risk. That's showing there is risk around delivery, but actually we believe we can rectify that, and we've got action plans in place to put that in place. So we still, I think, expect to deliver by the end of March 2024. We're just saying that's not all all systems go to that. We've got risk we've got to manage in order to get there.
Thank you for that. Councillor Biddle, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got several questions, actually. I'd like to go back. I think this is probably for others not around the table to answer. I'm concerned about, obviously, some of the red issues. 1 million unspent on the disabled facility grant, and why that is. That's what I calculated. I wonder why that is, and why, if you're looking at things in the round, it can't be spent on other projects, and perhaps it has been. It makes it look as if disabled people don't matter, and I'm concerned about that because clearly they do. I'm also concerned about the development of Convent Way. Is it Convent Way? Where you have an aspiration of 64% to be social rent. That's another red project. We've all had planning applications that we've dealt with, and the developers come back and say what we said originally is not viable. What's your fallback position on that, and what's the implication in financial terms? I'm also concerned about the increases in council tax and fees and charges, which are in the papers that we haven't been through here. I think that's a very easy option. And I'm concerned that it's easy for the council to levy and very difficult for the residents and businesses that are hit to pay for that. So I would rather there were more creative ways at looking at how we can diminish or reduce the gap, including looking at some projects and bearing in mind the fact that the organisation structure is about to change, and maybe some jobs will be realigned or reassessed. There are some, I think, that are nice to have rather than need to have, and should we be focusing on the need to have rather than the nice to have?
So I'll take the last question first. So we've always said, as a council, we'll only increase council tax if we absolutely need to. And I'll come to the fees and charges. I'll address that in just a second, but just on council tax itself. So obviously we haven't had any decision from the government on the level at which we can increase council tax without requiring referendum. That will probably come in December, generally, the settlement.
Might get early indication at autumn settlement.
Might get an early indication, yeah, autumn statement. But my default is not to increase council tax. It never has been. And I'm not making the political point here. However, I think the government have treated it as an easy option to pass on, because they've made very public statements last year that if you don't take the maximum increase, we'll assume that you're sufficient, and that will impact on your grant settlement for following years. So we have to be cognizant of that. And I don't say that as a political point. I say that as sometimes your hands are tied and you have to make those difficult decisions. And we will do everything that we can within these projects to get us close to the balanced budget position before we consider council tax. So that's where I'm at in terms of council tax. In terms of fees and charges, there is a review ongoing at the moment. So you'll see that that's generally bottomed out by the time we get to the budget setting in February. And we are looking at the effect of inflation, because a lot of the services are cost recovery anyway, and what that actually means, and then individual services at that point. So I don't have an answer for you, Councillor Bidoff, in terms of fees and charges, but on cost recovery, depending on where inflation is, I can't say that fees won't go up. So that's on those two. Now, disabled facilities grant and Convent Way, I think, if you don't mind, Phil, would you mind taking those two?
Can I just, before we do that, just comment on the fees and charges point, which is the inflation's also hitting those who pay, and that's the difficulty. It seems to me that you can't, double collect from them.
So I think what I'm saying at this point is those are all considerations that we've got as we're doing this review on fees and charges. So that's not lost in the work that we're doing at the moment.
Thanks, Leader, and thanks, Chair, and good evening, members of the committee. In terms of the DFG, this has been held under review in relation to what we're delivering and how we intend to address performance. Currently, there are 6.5 members of the team assessing, appraising, awarding finance under the scheme. In order to fully defray the grant in line with the conditions that are laid down, we propose to increase that by another 4 people. So capacity will be increased, fully capitalised to deliver on the programme. Then there will be some policy amendments that will come through by the end of February 24. And then there'll be some IT system improvements in order to monitor and facilitate the grant that will come through up until July 24. So in terms of where we are and the performance, Chair, and to answer Councillor Biddle's question, that is absolutely acknowledged, and we're addressing the core issues in terms of capacity to make sure that that grant is assessed, applications are processed quicker, and the grant is defrayed in terms of the guideline, so we fully spend that sum of money that's awarded to us, and that those processes are now in train or will move forward right the way through to July 24 next year.
Can I just ask what the grant is for then? Because it seems to be paying for structural improvements rather than benefits. Is that the aim of it?
Yeah, so it's to do with disability in the home and make the necessary amendments in order to effectively enable vulnerable people to remain in their own home and promote independence. The guideline that sits behind that is a whole framework of what is and is not acceptable under the guidelines. I'm sure that I haven't got that with me, so I can't go through it in detail, but ultimately it is a disabled facilities grant to enable vulnerable people to remain in their own homes.
Okay, can I just follow up on that? Do we have a staff shortage there in that department?
Yeah. Yes, Chair. I mean, fundamentally, there is the additional capacity of 4 people, which is senior case officer, an assistant case officer, a healthy homes surveyor, and a clerk of works. They will accompany the team that's already 6.5 FTE strong, which is a principal surveyor team manager, 4 surveyors, and then 2.5 FTE case aids and annotation officers. So it'll be an extended or revised team, one for a better word.
And this will be within budget?
Yeah, fully capitalised from the grant.
Thank you.
Yeah, can do. Do you want to? Yeah. So Convent's a little bit more complicated, and I'll try and explain it succinctly. So a huge, ambitious project for the borough, the right ambition, the right project, but the time needed to reflect on what the core components of that programme effectively is absolutely necessary. So I'm working with the team, with Leader, Councillor Bruce, Councillor Sampson to assess Convent and effectively look at the scheme, look at the programme effectively for delivery. As we can see in terms of Bank of England base rate, where that is at, inflation, how we procure and build, and how also the council play its part either in partnership with the developer or taking on burdens through the housing revenue account, which is a ring-fence account within the general fund, but got specific guidelines, including a 30-year sustainable plan. We've taken the time to assess that, and the reason why it's red is because of the programme and the need to bring forward a programme that means that from a Hounslow point of view, we're absolutely pitching that project to the market at the right time with the right product within it, and in order to make sure that the calibration with the housing revenue account is affordable over the 30-year plan. So we're not creating a problem, we're bringing forward a solution, even though we're slipping on the programme. So that is its explanation in its most succinct form, Chair.
Thank you for that, Phil. So who else?
And just all of that in relation to structural changes that you might be going through as an organisation.
So the structural changes, I would say from the outset, they're not agreed. They're at Cabinet on Tuesday, but it's the right opportunity to look at the organisation going forward, making sure that it's fit for public service as it will be. Should we deliver all of this? And it is about the accountabilities, the job roles. So there may be some changes in job roles as a result of that, and how they best fit with the priorities within the corporate plan. So some of this work that sort of Phil's alluded to, that we've alluded to, may well mean that people's roles change to better deliver. But that's absolutely the right thing to do. And as I said, I don't want to say too much because it's not yet been agreed by Cabinet, but that's the broad direction of travel there.
Is the intention, though, to slim down or to increase?
Not to increase. So the proposal in terms of at the top team, so the executive directors, is a reduction of one, and then we've gone down to the first three layers. At the moment, it's not an increase, it's not a decrease. It's about looking at the roles. And forgive me, I'm a little bit hesitant because there are obviously conversations that need to happen and are happening with the affected staff, and those are absolutely the right conversations to be having. But at the moment, we're not looking at a reduction.
Thank you, Lido. Is there any other questions by any other member? Just another one from me. Do we sort of have a figure for the levels of reserves?
So I believe they are in your slides, Chair. Oh no, sorry. We talk about the review. Sorry, the review of reserves. So reserves, there will be a headline figure, and I'm just finding it in the report. I think it's just to be clear that whilst you can look at a headline figure of the reserves, we have to be really clear about what is actually available to spend, and that will be your sort of minimum reserve position, which is about 13 million, from memory, if I remember correctly.
So that's the.
Sorry, Rupa knows the detail better.
It's just important to remember reserves are made up of lots of different types of reserves. So the elements of reserves that are earmarked for general fund are separate to the HRA, and some are ring-fenced for statutory purposes rather than usable. So the usable general fund earmarked reserves is it's forecast to be circa 200 million by the end of this year, which is going down from where it's currently opened up at the start of this year. That's then broken down into a number of different reserve categories. So some reserves set aside for operational requirements, some ring-fenced for under statute, so DSG, public health, and there are certain other funds that are ring-fenced for certain purposes under statute. So they're separately categorised into ring-fenced reserves. And then you've got what are strategic investment reserves or what might be risk reserves. So that's around balancing our risks every year. We do an assessment around that around about this time again in February, when we set the budget around where our risk levels are and what our risk reserves need to be in order to mitigate those risks. And then the strategic investment reserves about investing to deliver our corporate priorities. There's a breakdown of that in the cabinet report in terms of how those balances are broken down into those component parts.
Brilliant, thank you, Rupa. Question?
Yes, I'm concerned about obviously looking ahead and thinking about this really worrying, alarming gap that there is. This is a small point in a way, but it's also an important point because it affects staffing. And you've put in there that the pay increase that you're allowing is between 3.3 and 2%. Is that right? That's what I picked up from the papers. I'm not sure what was the pay increase this year, and is that exactly? That's what I'm concerned about. Is this too optimistically low, given that inflation's going up, given that we have to reward staff appropriately? I'm not sure that this is a realistic figure, given the need to balance and this gap coming up. 4.4 was this year, I think, wasn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, so at the moment, these are estimates in the plan, and we'll obviously keep iterating and updating these as we get more information that comes to light. So in terms of next year's budgetary assumptions and estimates at the moment, we've got it built based on inflation at the moment. So that includes the assumptions behind the pay inflation and the contract inflation is around September CPI at the moment. So it's 6.7% for next year is what's built into the estimates, 3.3% the year after and 2% the year after that. And we'd expect it to come down over that medium term in line with where inflation is expected to come down. The exact figure obviously is subject to confirmation. As we get more insight into what that might be, we'll build that into the assumptions.
It's not a question. It's a general point at some point whenever it suits.
Okay.
No, okay. These are public documents, and I can't tell you how many bits of jargon I counted particularly in the people portfolio paper, or acronyms which mean nothing to anybody unless they're explained. Please, I've asked this before, please can these documents be user-friendly for the public who aren't involved in local authorities? I don't know what PID, TCE, PPB, BTC, I'm lost, and we mustn't make that the standard that we aspire to. It must be better than that.
Absolutely, Dr. Kaspinov. I like plain English as well, and I get caught up in the jargon, so I accept that. And yes, absolutely, your point is absolutely noted.
Thank you for that. Just a question for myself regarding sort of digital drive. How are we doing with the changeover? Digital.
So you'll see, Chair, previously the digital side of the business and digital transformation was incorporated into another portfolio in the delivery plan. It's now been made separate because it cuts right across the organization, and you'll see some of the detail in there. There is a lot going on in the digital world, and there is a lot of activity, but I've got confidence in terms of the projects. And again, as Andrew kind of alluded to in an earlier answer, it's not about greenwashing everything. It's about having a clear idea of what is Amber, why is it Amber, when is it likely to start delivering. And some of this is, what I'm always focused on is how this is translated to our residents. So, we work with Arbound to hand out digital equipment where they need it, digital skills, digital training, acknowledging that some won't. A lot of our programs within the delivery plan, so the transforming customer experience, is around that shift and the review of our websites and how people can do transactions with, if they're comfortable to, how they can gain those digital skills as well when they need to, so that we are freeing up space for those that really don't feel confident. And we have to acknowledge they do exist in and around our borough, and they still need to interact with the council. But if more are moving to easier ways of transacting with the council, it frees up capacity.
Thank you for that, Leader. Is there a sort of drive for recruitment in analysis?
We've got a really good analysis and data team that sits under Sarah, isn't it? Do you mind if I invite Sarah to answer that question? She wasn't expected to be on camera this evening.
Thank you, Leader. And hello, colleagues and members of the committee. Sarah Philby, Assistant Director Corporate Strategy. Sorry, I don't have a placard. So yes, within my team, we have the Policy and Insight team, which includes the Intelligence Hub. And that team produces a wealth of local data that sits on the Hounslow Data Hub. That pulls together publicly available data, but also some of our own data where appropriately anonymised. And we use that to inform our service planning and all the delivery planning activity that you've heard about tonight. We are bolstering that team and developing the capacity and capability of that team alongside colleagues across the wider organisation, recognising that data insight isn't the preserve of a single team. It's an important part of many colleagues' roles, and we all need to be data literate in order to deliver good services. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you for that. It's just really the recruitment side, really. So have we sort of budgeted in for the future?
So my service budget has a certain amount set aside for that team, and we also have other monies that go in. So because of the important role that team plays in delivering the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, we access some public health grant to fund that, and other bits and bobs, technical term, to fund that team. I would always like to have a bit more, but we have to recognise the wider financial context in which we're operating.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you for that.
And just shameless plug there, members that haven't used the Data Hub, and in fact, members of the public, there is so much information on there and it's all publicly available. Please do use it. It's a resource for all of us and it's great.
Very quick, Councillor Biddulph.
Can I pick up on that point precisely? I was going to make it anyway.
Yeah,
Sorry,
just the question.
Yes. I think that there are moves to review the website, make it more easy to find information. The Data Hub is completely hidden from the main website. It's on a website of its own, as I understand it. It's not easy to find. I've Googled, it doesn't come up. And it does have a lot of information that is very valuable on it. So I do hope that that's being looked at as a priority. Thank you.
Absolutely confirm that is the case, yeah.
Thank you for that. So just the last of the questions for me, unless another committee member wants to come in there, but areas of increased demand, so where potentially it could affect our budget.
So areas of, adult social care and children's social care is very, very obvious, but also within the housing space as well. There is an unfunded pressure arising from our asylum-seeking population, which is roughly 1% of the population of Hounslow at the moment, and in particular unaccompanied asylum-seeking children as well. So I recently wrote to the immigration minister with my counterpart in Hillingdon. We're yet to receive a reply, but we very clearly set out. I mean, that's about £6 million. And as we get into winter, I worry that will increase as well. So, those are the main areas. There's a pressure in leisure, Lambton Leisure, as well, that we need to sort of mitigate over the longer term. So I think the key point there is to really understand those pressures, try and get underneath them, and try and mitigate against them. Now, how can you mitigate against demand rises in adult social care and children's social care? Some of that is about system changes and trying to manage the market better, but that all gets taken up in the project approach that we have to dealing with these issues.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, let's all go home. No, so it's really, I mean, it's fantastic. All the sort of questions that we sort of asked. Um, there seems to be really good sort of financial strategy there, and I'm certainly pleased about that. Committee members, the recommendations really just going forward is just keeping within budget. But wherever we need sort of resources, let's not shy away. We've got to serve our residents. We need to make sure that if resource needs to be sort of pulled from one area which doesn't have the demand, that it goes to other areas. Would all agree with that? Yep. So I do need a seconder on that. Yep. Thank you. And just a vote. Brilliant. Thank you all. So that's passed. There we are. Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you, Councillor Rajwat, and Andrew as well, and Rupa. You're more than welcome to sort of course stay if you like to. But yes, thank you for that. Okay, so we've got to go to the agenda item number 4. So this is the Housing Update Improvement Plan. When we met to develop our work programme in the summer, we were keen to understand what was being done to improve Council's housing function. We are the landlord of some 13,000 tenants, and the papers before us set out a housing improvement plan, which is likely extended beyond this municipal year and into 24-25. We have the opportunity to comment on this plan, and we joined today by Councillor Sampson, Cabinet Member for Housing Management, Phil Cresswell, Executive Director of Regeneration and Housing, and Modesta Onucha, Director of Housing. Welcome to you all. And Ben Tomlinson, I didn't miss you out by deliberate. Thank you for that. But Councillor Sampson, if I can ask you to introduce your report, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say thank you for inviting us back to update you. Yes, we have provided the improvement report, which is in your pack, which I assume everybody's had the opportunity to read, so I don't really want to go over that, but I'm happy to answer any questions from that. But what I would like to do is take the opportunity to update you on the topics of interest that were raised at the previous meeting, namely being the housing register, voids and lettings, the HIPS, what was known as HIPS, is now Housing Solutions, which makes more sense, and budgets. So if that's okay with you, Chair, I'd like to proceed in that way.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. So we have the housing register, as I reported in September's meeting when we was here. The figures in July were 8,944. You may remember that was the amount of cases, housing cases on the register waiting to be assessed. Today, I can report that we have only 1,115 left to be assessed. They should be all complete by the end of November. So we currently have 4,930 people waiting to be housed on the register. Now, with the 1,115, if the potential is that they are all successful, that brings our figure to the housing register of 6,045. So that's the total figure. So we've got a grip of it. There's been a lot of work into this, a lot of resources placed into this, and it speaks for itself. So happy to take any questions on that one before I move on, or I can carry on. Okay. So the next one would be the homelessness applications. We currently receive 18 applications per day. 12 of those are by appointment, and 6 of those are based on like an emergency walk-in basis. But the issue that we have there is because at the moment, the way that it's situated, we're in negotiations with facilities to actually get some more space downstairs so we can carry out assessments, so we can get them done quickly. We currently only have one seating arrangement down there. So, but like I say, once that's all negotiated and sorted out and space provided and so on, we'll be able to do that a lot quicker than we have been. Then I'll move on to housing voids. Housing voids have reduced to, when I reported back in September, I think I reported that the voids were just over 500. They're now just over 300. So 40 of those are, you'll be pleased to hear, are sheltered accommodation. But some of those are they're void purely because some of the schemes are more popular than others. So there's a waiting list. So, but that's where we are with that. So that's gone in the right direction. So we are now back on, previously the void times took roughly about 60 days to turn a void around, as everybody knows that there was major issues. But that was, we're now, because we've gone through the housing register and we've gone now through all the work that's gone into this, we're now back pretty much pre-COVID to our targets. We're back on target. So like I say, there's been a lot of work gone into this, and there's, and our improvement plan that we're working to, we have 8 work streams that monitors all of this, that keeps everything on track. So we're in a very good place. Happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Let's put it to the committee. Any questions? Councillor Tuck, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 questions. I'll ask the first one. How long do we think is an acceptable time for a property to come to a state where it is deemed fit for use? If it was classed as not fit for use or not in a condition where it can be allocated to a tenant, how long do we have a set KPI, like this much time is enough for the property to come to a state?
On a normal void, if we're talking about normal void turnaround time,
no, I'm not talking about normal void. I'm talking about a house which is classed that it is not fit
for human habitation type thing.
Yes. So how long is a specified time or a recommended time for that property to come back to a state where it is deemed fit?
It depends on what the type of work is that's required. If it's just like say a kitchen and a bathroom, or it might need a roof, or it might need or rising damp. There could be a number of aspects. It all depends on what it is. It really all depends on what it is.
Is there a maximum timeline?
60 days.
Because in my personal experience, I've seen properties which are vacant for 5 years. I don't see any reason why we can't repair and bring those property to a state in 5 years where they can be rented out or given for social housing.
I'm sure you can pick that up with Councillor Sampson afterwards. I'm sure. Yeah. But yeah, if you could just stick with it.
You said like we have about 4,930 in the waiting list and about 1,100 more to be assessed. So what are we doing to reduce it? Is there a regular interval where we assess those who have already got social housing to assess whether they still need it or they still meet the criteria?
Yes, there is. Some of these people that are on the list here are currently tenants. We carry out tenancy verification visits every year. So that then we can then establish, which we have found through the tenancy audits, where residents have actually, where their family member has died, who was the actual tenant, through that assessment, then we say, well, is there a right to succeed? On occasions there hasn't been, or they follow that process. It might mean that person then has to come out of that property. If there's a requirement to house them, if they meet the housing needs, they downsize into a smaller property. So that is always a piece of work. We're always looking at, monitoring our stock in that respect. Yes, they are.
Can I just pass it, Councillor Sharma, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to touch on the voids. Do we actually have a team that go out to to see the properties, because we get a lot of casework coming through saying this property's been here for so long, etc. But do we have an actual team that goes out into the community to check, to double check that they're voided, or if there's another reason behind it?
Yeah, no, we do. There is a team, and we have a team of surveyors that actually go out and do the specification of works. That comes back, then gets sent over to the operative. Work gets done, then it gets inspected, on letting, prior to letting, before it's letting. Yeah, so there is a team, yes.
So just a question for me, I guess. I'll just want to bring it down to the housing, just keeping with housing improvement plan. This time last year, of course, there was a lot of talk about mold and damp in homes. What is the progress with that, please?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, sorry. There's a damp and mold action plan that we're working through. There was, from memory, I haven't got it in front of me, but from memory, I think it was 940 properties were identified and surveyed. And the majority of, because I was at one of the workshops just recently and having a conversation with your man there, and he's like, pretty much there's like about 20 properties left to do. So they've really worked for it. And that again, that was a focus. A task force was pulled together to go out and deliver that. And they've done a fantastic job.
That is brilliant. Thank you for that, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor Biddulph?
Thank you. We never know what we don't know. And it was very interesting to find out from Modesta that there is now a temporary accommodation team or officer, whatever it happens to be, which can only be a good thing because the standard of some of the properties we offer people in temporary accommodation is very low. What is being done to assess those properties? Are we asking people who are being allocated to temporary accommodation to tell us what it's like? Or is it left to those who feel anxious enough and determined enough to advocate for change and improvement? Because I worry that we get told about it by the people who want change and others just think, well, this is all I can have. And it shouldn't be.
No, we get that, fully get it. But what we're getting ourselves into a position of where we are being proactive, where we are carrying out inspections. So we're getting together, like as Modesta's already said, like when you spoke, that there's going to be a manager of that area, and there's going to be a team purely dedicated to managing the properties, the private sector. So, but yeah, we've taken that on board, and that has certainly been addressed.
Thank you. Can I carry on? Yeah. I wanted to pick up on the comment that was made earlier about sheltered accommodation and there being a waiting list. My understanding is that if you say no to a property because it's not where you want to be, you get pushed back a year. That's what I've been told recently, which strikes me that that's not a waiting list for a particular property. That's just a process of managing people who say no. And I understand that some people might be very fussy and overly keen and disrupt the system as a result of that. But to have one strike and you're out when you're needing sheltered accommodation, you're getting older, you're more anxious, you've not got as much money, your future is looking bleak. It seems very harsh to have a one strike and you're out.
That rule does not apply to sheltered. We're going to build, the way that we're building the database is that where the residents will actually be able to say where they want to live, whatever scheme going forward. That's where we're aiming to get to. But at the moment, if they're given an offer of a property in Feltham that's available, but no, they want to live in Chiswick, and the voids will look at that and try and accommodate them the best way that they possibly can. And I'd say 10 times out of 10 that works. Because we're not about placing people into accommodation where they're going to be unhappy. We want people to live surrounded by their friends, their community, their families. So, but going where that rule comes into play, where if you've got a person, family that's homeless and they are given a reasonable offer, but for whatever reason they choose that they don't like it because it hasn't, I had casework just a couple of weeks back where they were given a reasonable offer, but they never stated in their paperwork about their medical needs and requiring a lift. So then that then is deemed, that gets looked at in a completely different way. So there are rules, that it's done on it's not a one strike, that's it. It's on a case by case basis, what's deemed as reasonable.
Okay, then there might be a need then for some internal communications, because I'll come to you separately with the casework I've got, but that there has been a sheltered accommodation, one strike in or out threat. So it's uncomfortable for the person in a difficult position. Bring that.
Is there any other questions from committee members? I just want to bring it back to housing improvement plan. Can we just stick with housing improvement plan for the item number 4? Of course, item number 5 does go into homelessness as well. So just on the housing improvement plan, if anybody else, committee members, want to ask a question? No. Everyone's quite happy with housing improvement because I mean it's great. You've done absolutely fantastic work over the period, which is brilliant. We sort of move into sort of now the discussion or recommendations. Is there any from the committee members? Oh, okay, yeah.
I think in our last meeting, Ms. Esther, you said something about a website going live, the homelessness. Is that live now?
So what we've got, sorry, Chair, welcome everyone. So Modestano, just introducing myself. So in terms of the website, we have got the new IT system for homelessness, which is the MRI. That's what it's called, also called Jigsaw. So the customer side of it, we're hoping that it will go live before Christmas. We are discussing it today, but we wanted to sort of get some of the internal staff to test it to make sure that it works well for the customers. So the website, we've reviewed the website. We've got 8 different contents written, and they are being held at the moment on a test site. Also, we're hoping that those will go live before Christmas, and that will cover one of the things that Councillor Sampson is about to talk about in terms of the improvement around the homelessness area. So that customer journey, we want it to be seamless so that instead of people ringing us, that they go on the new website to put in their details, and also that will help to triage them. For example, if you say, I've been asked to leave, it will take you to the advice that is appropriate to you. Then my landlord is giving me a notice, it takes you to that next step. So what it may mean is that it's going to reduce the number of people who need to contact us or who need to come here because they will get the advice they need instantly. So we agreed with Councillor Sampson today that there's going to be a briefing for members once we are ready to go live, and we'll also do a demo for members, but we're just waiting to sort out all the technicalities before we put those dates out. Thank you.
I'd just like to add, off the back of what Modesta said, yes, there's going to be like a soft launch, because we're the people that, if it's not right, they come to. So we just got to make sure that it's right. So, and again, a lot of work's gone into this, and yeah, so hopefully we're hoping to have that briefing before Christmas.
Thank you. So we're just going to, Councillor Tuck, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it will be useful if we can publish a report of voids, either monthly or if not possible monthly, then quarterly, a report of voids, not just the number of voids, list of voids, like these properties are still void.
We will not be putting any addresses on the website purely because that will potentially invite squatters and various other antisocial behaviour. It could attract that. So we won't be putting addresses, but we can certainly put, the amount of voids that we have. But that's what we're planning to do anyway with the new IT system. It's all going to be there.
Councillor Sharma, please.
With regards to what Councillor Tack just said, would obviously for security purposes you wouldn't be able to put the addresses, but would we not be able to know ward by ward an amount, or is that not?
We'll look at it. We can't say yes or no because we don't know how difficult that is, but we'll certainly take that away and have a look at it.
We've certainly gone through both the agenda 4 and 5 of tonight. So I'll just ask this question with regards to just some of the figures. Do we have borough-specific figures on homelessness?
Yes. So there are in London, there's over 62,000 households according to the research carried out by London councils. We are ourselves currently 3 million over budget for homelessness. London Council's research data shows that the average net deficit for homelessness services spending will be 5.7 million per council in 23-24, a rise of 36.6% from the previous financial year. So projection is up, and we've just got to face the reality of it.
And with regards to the actual numbers of rough sleepers, do we have that, or homelessness?
Chair, I can confirm that after this meeting, because what we are doing at the moment, we are migrating all the homelessness applications onto a new system. As of last count, we had migrated about just over 1,000 applications, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are homeless, because under the Homelessness Reduction Act, there are various stages. Some of them are at the approach stage, which means they might still have some time to stay where they are. Some are prevention stage, some are the relief stage. So really, you're talking about, if I say you got about 1,300 active applications, it doesn't mean they're all homeless. But in terms of the footfall at the moment, as Councillor Sampson said earlier on, we get about 12 applications a day by appointment and 6 to walk in. But in addition to that, what Councillor Sampson also said, we get about 5 additional people being asked to leave by the Home Office that come to us every day. So that contributes to all the pressure, because when the Home Office asks them to leave, they come to us. And being that we have a lot of hotels in the borough, they come to us. So if they meet the priority need, we have to give them accommodation. If they don't, then we don't accommodate those people. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a follow-up on that. So when we do, what is the time frame to get the people in some sort of accommodation?
So when you come to us for accommodation, so we have to apply the legal test, and the legal test is as set out in legislation. Unlike adult social care, homelessness, we don't actually have the discretion to say we're going to house somebody. You have to be eligible by law, because even some of the people that the Home Office may have determined the application that are not eligible, if they come, we can't house them. So if you're eligible and you don't have anywhere to go, then duty is triggered to provide interim accommodation, which will be temporary accommodation. So sometimes we're able to get good quality accommodation, but the challenge is that Councillor Bidoff was describing kicks in, because if we have to find accommodation straight away to somebody, that's when we end up in accommodation that we then have to inspect to make sure that it meets the standard. So, but when we put you in temporary accommodation, you'll be there as long as it would take for you to get permanently rehoused. So there is really no set time limit for you to be in temporary accommodation, because it depends on supply of permanent accommodation.
And just to confirm, when we actually have these applications in, are we actually letting those residents know that it's almost a long piece of string? We don't know when we're going to get accommodation for you.
Yes, I can confirm, Chair, that under our new process, when you come in, you get a letter, you get your personal housing plan, and within your personal housing plan, we also set out, which we are required to do by law, we set out what steps you could be taking to find accommodation yourself. We also set out what the council can do for you. We set out as well, if you put in temporary accommodation, there is no average waiting time. You're likely to remain there until we can find accommodation to meet our statutory duty, which might be, it might be a Lambton property, for example, accommodation in the private rented sector where we can discharge duty. It might be a private sector accommodation where we continue to owe you duty. It might be council accommodation in the long run. Just depends on what is available. But we make sure now that people know who their caseworker is, because within your personal housing plan, it tells you who your caseworker is. I think that was some of the issues we had previously, because we didn't really give people the letters contributed to by COVID. People didn't know who to talk to. But if you come now in the reception, you should know who is dealing with your case.
Thank you, Modesta. Richard, Councillor Foot, please.
Yes, serious problems I had in my term was the amount of turnover there was in staff, judging it on the troubles that they have. I mean, it's a job without any thanks. I know that for many of the staff. And do you still have a problem with turnover?
Yes, we do. And trying to retain knowledgeable and experienced staff and to attract them, there is a difficulty, yes. But it's the same right across London because everyone's competing against each other.
Councillor Biddulph, please.
Thank you. People are coming in, as you say, quite a lot of them every day. You need more space to see them, inevitably. There's a huge expectation amongst people who want to be assessed as they want to be assessed, the best possible chance they have of getting accommodation quickly, face to face with people. And there is quite a record, certainly in casework, of people saying, I turned up, there wasn't anybody to see. Somebody said they'll be down in 40 minutes, nobody came, so I left. I'm wondering whether that is an issue, and if so, what you're doing about it. And in particular, is working from home impacting on your department, and is that adding to the pressures of people not being available to see people face to face?
That used to be an issue, it's no longer an issue. The staff are required to come into Hounslow House 3 days a week. There's a rota, so there's always staff here. I can only apologise what happened in the past because there were waiting times and they were told to come back on different and whatever. But that is not how it is now. We are very, we've got a job to do, and we're playing with people's lives and things have got to be sorted out, and they are. So, like I say, the staff have done a lot of work behind the scenes to get us where we are now. And now all that we need is the additional space in order to carry on doing that good work and getting people seen as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Any other sort of questions from anyone else? Just a quick one from me, using sort of technology and sort of working from home and hybrid working and so on. Is there any scope for sort of Teams meeting if somebody wants to get hold of someone or caseworker, or Zoom meetings or anything like that?
Absolutely. That's always on offer. Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great. Any other questions or comments or discussions?
Just to pick up on something that Councillor Foot said, which is that on the whole it is a thankless task. So thank you to all in the team.
Thank you. I mean, it's great sort of news that we've heard with sort of housing as well as the homelessness sort of situation and preventative sort of measures that have been placed into your department. So thank you for that and well done. That's brilliant. We do have some recommendations. Of course, I'll pass it to the committee. For for the improvement plans, housing division to listen more to the residents, more information on voids. So this is of course just the data, so keeping data protected there, and just making a case to the government about the impact of the Home Office action when it comes to homelessness. Is that all in agreement? I just need a seconder. Yeah, and just a vote. Brilliant, thank you. That's passed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was going to say, if you want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay. But okay, brilliant. So we're just moving on to, we're going to skip it a little bit. So agenda item number 6, which is electric vehicle charging strategy overview. The council has committed to introduce 2,000 new charging points for electric vehicles. The paper set out the date and asked the committee to note on plans, progress, details of accompanying tender exercise, but also feedback on any aspects of council's approach. We are joined this evening by Councillor Catherine Dunn, Deputy Leader of the Council and Portfolio Holder for Climate, Environment and Transport, and Jefferson, Assistant Director for Traffic, Transport and Parking. Welcome. Okay, so Councillor Dunn, whenever you're ready, you have your 5 minutes.
Okay, so I mean, you've sort of introduced already the report, which explains where we're up to with our pledge to introduce 2,000 additional EV charging points and our EV charging strategy. So we developed our EV charging strategy last year and consulted on that, and it has been agreed. The details are in the report, and I believe the appendix also has the sort of key principles of the strategy. So the aim is to gain a good coverage of EV charging points across the entire borough. And the way that's going to happen has been broken down in the report. We are moving away from a kind of reactive approach in response to requests from residents to a more proactive approach that aims to meet both current and future demand for EV charging. As we know, it's going to become more and more important as diesel and petrol cars are phased out, though there has been a change in the dates set forward for that by the government. But as a borough, we still are encouraging and preparing ourselves for the changeover to electric vehicles. And we know that more and more of our residents are purchasing or indeed leasing electric vehicles. We also have our own fleet to electrify and to provide the charging infrastructure for that, including some of the larger vehicles that we use ourselves and through our council companies. So in terms of the where we're up to with the rollout, so we have this is a big thing. We have undertaken a tender procurement process on various lots, so 4 different lots to represent the different types of chargers, from the slow chargers that you will know perhaps already retrofitted into lampposts where people can charge their vehicles in residential areas overnight, to the much faster and even the ones known as rapid chargers, which we would more be located in, say, public car parks, in our town centres, on main roads, corridors, etc., where people are visiting and want to be able to charge their cars quickly. So the strategy and the procurement exercise covers all of that. We have made some awards, or we're about to.
Well, we should be in a position to make some awards very soon.
Yeah. So there was a little setback with some of the government funding that we received, took longer to come through than we expected. So that led to some delays, but we are in a position there. So we are leading a cluster of boroughs that have received government funding, and we're tying that in with our overall strategy to make sure that it makes sense. Yeah. So as Jefferson's reminded me, we are re-procuring one of the lots and tying in the funding with that to help to make it more attractive, because that funding wasn't there at the stage where we were tendering the first time. We didn't get the interest that we'd hoped we had, but I think it's looking a lot more positive now.
That's brilliant. That's great news. Is there? I'll pass it to the committee. Councillor Foot, please.
Yeah, can I? I'm making this a bit personal because of the situation. That one of the positions I have, for instance, is that I can't park on my garden, so mine is street parking. I also have a disabled spot as a registered disabled person, and that spot is outside my house, which is fine, but there isn't a lamppost outside my house. So how are we looking at how we assist people who are in that situation of being disabled but can't get parking close to their house where they can get charging as well as a disabled spacing?
I may maybe ask Jefferson to come in on that. I think there are going to be situations like that, and I think we probably do have to make a distinction here between charging and parking. But Jefferson will speak to any details.
Jefferson Welcome, Assistant Director for Traffic, Transport and Parking. Good evening, committee members. That's a very interesting question, Councillor Foot. And you are in a very unique position because there'll be very, very few people like you who wouldn't have a lamp column outside their property. Most properties across the borough would have a lamp column within a few meters from their entrance. Okay, in that case, then you will have. Right. Right. For most properties where on-street parking provision isn't available, off-street parking provision is available, then you have access. So the typology we've used is it prioritizes properties where off-street parking provision isn't available. So those people will have no prospect or have less of a prospect of having off-street charging facilities. So in that case, we make sure that we have more charge points in those areas. If you still can't find a charge point within the street column charge points, then lot 2, which is for fast rapid charge points that are within leisure centers, car parks and the like, will still be easily accessible to you. But at the same time, if you want to charge your vehicle, you don't necessarily have to be, it doesn't have to be on your street. So you can go to the next street, because each of these charge points will have dedicated parking spots. So you can park in the parking bay on the street right next to yours, charge your vehicle and bring it back to your house if you want to do so. If you want to charge rapidly, you can drive to a car park, a leisure center within close proximity to your place to charge. If that doesn't meet your needs, also you can go to a rapid charge point, which you can find in town centers, which are generally much quicker to use. So the residential ones are useful because they can serve you overnight. But if you can't find one within close proximity, you have options of either using the fast ones, or you can use the rapid ones. Which you can find in town centres.
Sorry, how long does what's a rapid one mean? I mean, is it half an hour? Is it 2 hours?
I think probably what is useful is, without me quoting, so to make sure that I don't mislead you, is probably to give you a sense of the difference in strength. So for a slow charger, the one you have in a lamp column, you have 3 to 5 kilowatts. A fast one is 7 to 22 kilowatts, and a rapid one is 50 kilowatts plus. So some of them are much quicker than a typical lamp column. So sometimes about 10 times quicker. Just give you an example. In time, so if you're charging 5-6 hours, for example, in a charge point at your house outside your property, using a lamp column charger, the one that you'll find the rapid or fast or a fast charger would be considerably quicker than that. I can't give you exact figures, but it will be considerably quicker. If you look at the strength and the differential in strength, that gives you a sense. I would imagine that an hour of charging would be.
My concern is that for disabled people, the measurement for having a parking space outside your house is your ability to walk 50 meters. Now, 50 meters is not a long distance, but that's the limit of your ability to be able to walk that and then go and to park your car, walk it, and then have to walk back again is going to be outside the ability of lots of disabled people. That's why I'm raising this question, because I've not heard it been raised in any other venue.
In specific cases, whilst we're looking at these typologies and we have these distances, that gives us an indication of how close we want charge points to be. Doesn't mean that they're inflexible. We can make changes to suit any specific need, if that's raised with us, of course. So if a disabled person raises a request with us, we can bring it closer to where they live.
That's what when here there will be a consideration for disabled people and an understanding.
Yeah, so we've got a sort of general coverage that we want to achieve, and that's based on averages and what we think most the sort of average person can walk, etc., to get to. But as Jefferson said, then that can obviously be adjusted where necessary, if people have specific needs.
Councillor Mayor, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just clarify that you're saying there will be at some point a charging point for e-vehicles every 50 meters, or did I misunderstand that?
I mean, basically what we've said is in our strategy that residents who live in areas with little or no off-street parking, we aim for them to be within a 1-minute walk from a charging point, and then by March 24, whether we achieve that, but with 2024, and by 2026 within a 30-second walk of a charging point. And obviously, where there's areas with more off-street parking, then we won't have as much on-street parking, because the assumption will be that people can charge at their properties.
And also, is there a long-term plan since there's a huge drive for e-vehicles and moving away from essentially fuel vehicles, is there a long-term plan to increase that number so supposedly there may be a charging point at every 50 meters or every minute's distance of walk, but essentially with the number of vehicles that would be increasing, may not be instant, but over the number of years or within the next decade or so, is there a long-term plan to increase those number of charging points?
Yeah, so we're already our target and where we're going to get to will already over provide for the need that we are anticipating in the next 2 to 3 years. So we'll just need to keep an eye on that and what's needed going forward. I should add that whilst we encourage the change to electric vehicles for those journeys that are needed to be taken by car, we do, of course, want to reduce the number of car journeys that's taken on our streets in our borough and encourage more walking, cycling and use of public transport, because simply our streets can't sustain continued growth of cars. And so a lot of our new developments are car-free developments because our streets simply can't sustain more cars, and the encouragement there is for people to use public transport or, of course, to walk or cycle. So we need to be careful that whilst we are encouraging the use of electric vehicles over internal combustion engine vehicles, that we don't lose sight of that overall objective to actually reduce the number of car journeys on our streets.
And of course, helping the climate as well. Councillor Tuck, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just read in the plan that we have a proposal for 1,000 charge points by mid of 2024-25. And I see in the key timelines for the levy fund, LEVI fund, it says like a contract review to be submitted by September 2024. I'm not sure if it is going to impact the delivery of these initial 1,000 charge points, but if it does, how does it impact our plan?
Thanks, Councillor Tak. The target by August 2024 is to deliver 1,000 charge points, and that is in line with the delivery plan. So we cannot, even though we're aiming for 2001 charge points, that has to be delivered for a period of 3 years. We're looking to front load it, hence we are aiming for 1,000 within less than a year from now. That report will just be an update report to OZEV, which we have to do throughout the delivery period to justify the funding that they're providing for lot 1, which is the streetlight column charge points. So it will have no impact, is basically my point.
Again, I saw in the report that we're doing an internal consultation at the moment. Consultation is something that baffles me on several times. Like many a times, the committee has recommended a consultation with the ward councillors. I'm not sure a consultation with ward councillors will happen on the locations of the EV charge points, because Councillor Foot has raised a very valid point. So if many of the ward councillors will be aware of specific points like that, a recent failure I have seen in those terms is when the Lime bikes docking stations came into pictures. The ward councillors were not aware of the locations beforehand. So it will be a good idea if ward councillors are also included in those consultations, if they can.
Thank you, Councillor Tak. Yes, ward councillors will be included in the consultations as they were for Lime bikes. If you didn't receive that email, then I do apologise for that, but all ward councillors were informed of the locations and were encouraged to attend a meeting with officers to give their thoughts on those locations, or if they couldn't attend the meeting, to submit their thoughts by writing. So I'm not sure how you managed to miss out on that, but I do apologise if that's the case.
Councillor Biddulph, please.
Thank you. I was going to ask that question as well. We were informed, we weren't consulted. I think that's the point. Our views weren't necessarily listened to, and the consequences are being felt. So I think that's certainly what I was going to ask is, could we actually be consulted and those views taken on board rather than ignored?
I would like to come in there, Chair. Could I come in, please? Meetings were held with ward councillors. Your views were taken on board.
No.
In many cases, the locations were changed based on your views.
In many cases elsewhere, but not necessarily everywhere. I think.
No, of course
that's-
not necessarily everywhere.
Well, I think it would be helpful if you could do a bit more of the listening and the taking on board than just issuing instructions, because it did feel very much like that. There was a meeting, I couldn't do the date, only one day was offered.
We'll have
So-
this as,
yeah.
as a
As you
recommendation.
know from previous experience, Councillor Biddulph, when you can't do a meeting date, you can always ask for another one.
Oh, I did. Don't worry. I've been all through that. That's not the issue. The issue is that I provided a lot of information on paper and it wasn't taken on board. And as a result, we've got some spaces that are in the wrong place and are causing problems. But let's leave that to one side. The point is, could we have some more consultation, as Councillor Tack said, rather than instruction?
I don't understand how you can call it instruction when you were asked for your views and they were taken on board.
Well, they weren't, but let's leave it there because
Well, it's funny because it worked in every other ward.
Oh, that's very odd. Yes, and you can carry on in this vein, or we can have a constructive discussion. I think you said that there were 2,000 additional charges, 2001 additional, which is about 30 per ward. It's multi-layered really. Is demand ultimately going to be for fast charging? And is our work implementing the slower charges in lampposts, etc., going to become redundant? And that feeds into my next point, which is I think Jefferson said that these spaces are going to be dedicated EV chargers, which I think means no other parking in that space, only for electric vehicles. So those are parking spaces that are ultimately perhaps going to be unusable because people are wanting the fast chargers and not the slow chargers, or in a period when you don't know what demand is going to be like, they're going to be rendered unusable because they're for EV charging. And the 30 per ward roughly, I mean, no, it's not going to end up like that. We haven't got a map, and you may not have a map yet, but it would be useful to have a map of where you think you're going to prioritise, because the paper does say you've favoured Chiswick rather more than other areas, and it's time to rebalance. So I think we'd like to have an understanding of what that rebalancing is.
Sure. So we don't expect that the charges will become redundant. People do like to charge their vehicles overnight, and that will, because these lamppost chargers are located in residential areas, we do expect that there will be continued demand for that. Obviously, we need to keep an eye on what the trends are, and if that changes, yes, I agree, there's no point having redundant charges or spaces that can't be used. However, we are expecting that more and more people will be getting electric vehicles, and so there will be fewer non-electric vehicles that need charging.
Any other question from committee members?
Sorry, the map point wasn't answered.
The map. Yeah.
Yes, there will be maps available. Yeah, and in terms of the locations of the charge points, ward councillors will be consulted, as Councillor Don mentioned, and obviously we'll have to make sure that there's still enough parking provision for non-EVs to park. So your concerns around redundant spaces, I don't think that would be a major concern, because also there's an incentive for people to use those lamp column charge points. It's pretty much convenience. You can park and charge because they're slow, they take more time, and people can park overnight and charge their cars, which generally tariffs tend to be cheaper as well.
It's more about the number of EVs that there are on the road and whether people can afford to buy them. Have a space outside their house would be terrific. But if they can't afford to buy, then that space is potentially redundant. That was my point.
That's a fair point, but trajectory at the moment is on the up. The EV sales have been going up significantly, exponentially actually, over the past couple of years. If that continues, then demand will also is likely to increase significantly. Hence, we are even over providing more than we probably need at this point. But I think that's a good thing than not.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on that point there. So demand, would you say by 2026, 2,000 is not going to be enough?
Based on the forecast we have received, and Nevis are essentially the equivalent of the OBR of electric vehicles. Their view is that what we are proposing is more than we currently need. For me, that's a good thing. Yeah, for future, but we have to future-proof the asset. But also, this is a forecasting organization. They tend to be generally very conservative, and therefore their estimation is probably going to be a lot less than the reality will prove. So I think we'd rather be in a position where we're over-providing than not providing enough. But also, this will be subject to annual reviews, and we have to monitor utilization of the charge points we've introduced to see if there's a need for us to continue at the projected pace.
Thank you. And just for me again, just the infrastructure side of things, it's all good in the borough?
I think, are you referring to the grid capacity?
Yes, we have consulted with DNOs, which is the network electricity companies, and they are content with our proposals.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Is there any other sort of question or you want to raise with this? No. Okay. So really, just from recommendations, really, is just engaging with local members to help scope the approach. So once they're sort of just consulting us, really. Once we've got the tenure. Can I have a seconder to that? Yeah. Vote. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. That's passed. Thank you very much. And that ends our item for EV charging. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Again, you're more than welcome to stay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so just moving on to agenda item number 7. So this is update from scrutiny panels and the Northwest London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. OSC will know we have 3 scrutiny panels across the municipal year. I'd like to ask each panel chair to provide a short update of their work thus far. The committee will note that Councillor Sidhu, who was vice chair, is now following Councillor Perisotto standing down from that role, the chair of the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel. Councillor Sidhu, can you provide an update on the work of the panel, please?
Hi, good evening. I was hoping you wasn't going to ask me to go first. So this year, the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel are conducting a deep dive into school readiness for children ages 0 to 5. This will be conducted with the circumstances of COVID, pandemic, and whatever's happened before and after, just to see whether children are actually ready to go to school, whether they're toilet trained and know how to do the basic ABC. The main areas we're going to be investigating are what effects the children have and not being ready to go to school, the key barriers of school readiness in Hounslow, evaluate school readiness across the boundaries of Hounslow, and also identifying whether there's certain groups that currently don't reach the assistance support. The panel intends to invite senior officers, teachers, social workers, parents, carers, GPs and other health professions to come and do a presentation to the panel and have a focus group and visit sites. And that's it, basically.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Councillor Sidhu. And as you know, Councillor Sharma is both the chair of Council's Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panel and the Council Representative on the North West London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can you provide an update on the work of Health and Adults Care Scrutiny Panel and an update on JHOSC, please?
Thank you, Chair. Since our last meeting, our last review and scrutiny meeting, there has been no meetings. We haven't had any meetings. So I gave the most up to date in our last meeting. At my next Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panel meeting will be on the 15th of November, where we will be doing a deep dive for support for SEND individuals to seek paid employment. So it's going to be what is our offer of employment for SEND adults in the borough. And we're interested in understanding what kind of support is available for SEND individuals to take up paid employment, both amongst employers in the borough and within the council itself. As of 2018-19, there were approximately 1,135 individuals in Hounslow with a learning disability. Hounslow is below the national average in terms of employing people with learning disabilities, with a severe drop-off being reported from 2019-2020 to 2021-2022, from a 26.8% of individuals with learning disabilities being in employment to just 3.2%. The data comes from Adult Social Care Outcomes Framework, and the data stems from the number of working age disabled clients that is reported by the council to the NHS Digital through case management and administration systems. Our deep dive will run from the 15th of November to this year to the 5th of March 2024, during which time the panel will review the current council support and services, as well as wider issues across all sectors. It will also look to the work of other London councils which have a higher rate of employment amongst their SEND individuals to draw lessons from best practice. The panel intends to engage various stakeholders, including lead members, officers, voluntary sector organisations, and will put particular emphasis on engaging with SEND individuals and carers. It will also consider innovation and what improvements may be made to Hounslow's offer for SEND employment. Our main areas of the investigation will be why Hounslow as a borough has a lower rate of employment among SEND adults, what the council and other statutory bodies are doing to encourage applications from SEND individuals, as well as our broader Hounslow offer. What are the examples of good practice to support SEND individuals to enter the workforce, and how is this measured? The experience of SEND individuals in seeking employment and what potential barriers and facilitators may be. The panel will then make recommendations on where the council and other partners might ensure that SEND individuals can better engage the workforce. And then coming back to JOSC, there has been no further meetings. The next meeting is on the 5th of December and will be held here at Hounslow House.
Oh, that's brilliant that we are hosting that. Thank you so much, Councillor Sharma. Councillor Mayor, an update from you, please, on the work of the Housing and Environment Scrutiny Panel, please.
So the panel had its first meeting on the 4th of July. During this meeting, members decided to shift their focus to environment, considering that housing had been discussed and was the primary focus for the panel for the preceding 3 years. This new direction includes a specific emphasis on diversity and nature recovery within the borough. It also aligns with the council's commitment to becoming a greener borough and our preparedness to comply with the new legislation, which requires a minimum of 10% biodiversity net gain for the developments. So the terms of reference that have been that we've established to investigate would be the processes and performances and operational context by which the council supports and enforces biodiversity net gain. Secondly, the borough-wide policy centered around biodiversity, with a focus on tree planting and other natural flood resilience measures, such as sustainable drainage systems. And finally, how the council and its partners, residents, and relevant stakeholders can collaborate to protect enhanced biodiversity in the borough. And also, currently, the panel is in the process of appointing a co-optee. So Joe Gilbert from Wild Chiswick to our panel, and confirming guest speakers to join us for our meeting on 16 November, including Councillor Dunn, who also is the portfolio holder of climate and environment. That's it.
No, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And I'm sure if committee members want to understand a little bit more, Councillor Sharma, Sidhu and Councillor May would be more than happy to provide you with further information on that outside of this meeting. Brilliant. Okay, so we move on to agenda item number 8. This is the work programme. So we develop a work programme in June in good practice to keep the document under review. I've been asked to note that Ofsted updates will be in February. So next time we meet in February, we'll get the Ofsted updates for the inspections of children's services in committee. So yeah, that's pretty good. But are there any sort of areas that a committee think that we should look into up to this point? No. No, brilliant. Okay, thank you. And of course, if committee members do want to change, we do need to, of course, remember something does need to come off the work programme as well. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 9. Any urgent business? Nothing from me. Anything from committee members? And lastly, sort of an agenda item number 10, which is the next date of the meeting. Will be the 8th of February 2024, I should say. God blimey. And to that, the meeting of the Council Overview Scrutiny Committee draws to a close. So I'll thank you all for your contributions today, and thank you for everyone in the audience as well as online. Thank you. Good night.